Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back here on the RENNSPORT channel to a very special event, hence why we would name it a RENNSPORT special event. Today here for the Florida Beach 500 kilometers around Daytona International Speedway, hypercars and GT3s, some multi-class action, a very exclusive grid and plenty of action to be broadcasted to you by us. And with us, of course, I mean myself and Tim Ireland here in the commentary booth for today.
Hey Lino, and hello everyone in Twitch. How are you guys doing today? It's a Sunday, but let's not think about work tomorrow. Let's think about 500 miles of the Daytona Speedway, which is coming up and should be a pretty exciting race, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we had some very, very good Daytona races in the past, and this one, of course, is a bit different. We had a qualification phase for this, so you could qualify by setting good lap times. And that resulted in the grid we will have here today. We see some old faces, we see some people we see week in and out. And a good mix between hypercars and GT3s as well, right now in qualifying. And of course, with this grid we also have qualifying with both cars on track simultaneously.
Yeah, a bit more of a type of qualifying session you'd probably be more used to watching any of the IMSA series or the SRO events where they've got multiple classes all on track at the same time. So finding a little bit of empty road to get a good lap in is going to be a skill these guys are going to have to learn pretty quick.
Yeah, we had some very interesting multi-class races, of course, with the hypercars and GT3s, always a very popular combo. But I think not in this capacity. We are expecting a bit over 2 hours race time, 87 laps. Of course, led by the hypercars. And it could be very interesting with all these traffic situations, especially GT3 seems to be very, very competitive. And several platinum drivers actually fighting for the win here today. So with all the drivers and all the talent we have, what do you think we will see in the race pace-wise over the time, with the tires especially?
I'm not entirely sure, I've got to admit, what's going to happen. I mean, obviously I don't know for sure what's going to happen, but yeah, a lot of the kind of really quick drivers seem to have played it safe and gone for the GT3s. We've got hopefully a still pretty competitive hypercar class, and yeah, the GT3 drivers not so used to being the slow class, so they're going to have to keep their eyes open, give away where possible for the hypercars. Daytona's pretty good for multi-class racing. There's plenty of overtaking opportunities, so hopefully it won't cause too many issues, but just enough to spice things up a little bit.
Little spin here for Timothy Fridge coming onto the banking. Of course, this will also be a big thing in the hypercars especially. Keeping the tires in check. With the GT3s we have seen them doing 2.4 hour races and all that kind of stuff. With the hypercars it is a bit new, it is different, and of course without ABS and a bit of traction control to help yourself, can be easy to lock them up, and maybe we'll see some strategy calls being made there with the pit stops.
Yeah, flat spots on the hypercars is going to be a big thing, I think. It's possible to drive it without flat spotting, but it is something you have to practice quite a lot at before you get any good at it. I am terrible. And they are very juddery, and it's not what you want for a 500-mile race, that's for sure.
Indeed. You can see the car's pretty spread out on tracks. Maximilian Din getting a nice tow there from one of the 2 platinum Porsches we have here today. This one being driven by Tony Etzelsberger. Maybe putting in a good lap time here. Improving once more, and he's currently leading in the GT3 field. One of the returnees driving hypercar is Sasha Andrich. We've seen him, I think, quite some time ago in the likes of RCL, and he's back for this event, which is very nice to see. He's put some practice in, currently 3rd in hypercar. But I also think we will see some more drivers going about out a bit later in this session, trying to find the perfect spot in traffic.
Yeah, there's some big spots on the map right now. There's some pretty empty sections of the track, and if you can score yourself one of those, you get some nice clean air. But as Max Dean just showed as well, sometimes it can be a bit beneficial to be in traffic if you can catch yourself a nice slipstream on one of the banking sections at the end.
Enrico Bräuninger just behind the other Platinum Porsche we have here today. I believe that might be David Baker. Also trying to get himself a nice toe down the front stretch. Enrico, of course, yesterday not having the luckiest race, but today I'm trying to make up for it. As we go onto the banking, we will see that a lot today, I think, this picture. One car following another and then slowly itching closer.
Yeah, just got to make sure when they're doing those kind of moves to check to make sure there isn't a hypercar steaming past on the other side of the track.
Yeah, of course, that will also be a big part of it. I mean, the hypercars, also for the hypercars vice versa, the GT3 traffic can really decide over where you gain or lose a position and where you are in the grand scheme of things. Can actually help you if you get a little slipstream down the banking when your opponent doesn't. See what Enrico can do on this lap with the slipstream. Does not improve, so still 11th overall for him. Currently in 10th OG Stan. Lots of hot lap series AMGs out there. I think we have 3 drivers using them. Carlos Salazar just put in his first valid lap time, putting him 12th overall. That's
4th in the GT3.
4th in class.
And 0.8 seconds behind Max Dean, so a bit of a gap right now, but there's a fairly strong midfield, as you'd expect.
I think the GT3 times will also come a bit closer. We have a longer session here. Still 9 minutes to go in this quali session. But also up front in the hypercar class, Julian Chicot and Timothy Fritsch just 2/10 apart from each other. Julian Chicot set the all-out fastest lap in the qualification servers. So he is mighty fast, but Timothy Fritsch seems to be not off that by too much.
No, there's only 2/10 in it right now, so that's pretty close. Got a bit of a gap back from there to Dennis Kurtzer and Chestu Monero, who were both kind of squabbling over 3rd place. But Julian Chicot currently setting the best time and seems to be stamping his authority on the race from the begin with.
That seems like another good lap. See what he can do. Current benchmark is 33.26. Does not improve this time around. Timothy Fritsch currently in Sector 1. But with the hypercar you have to be so smooth around some of these acceleration zones. Just 800 between the two of them in Sector 1. But it seems like Timothy Fritsch is going to get a bit of a slipstream from Kimi Harpala in the first banking.
Kimi Harpala's still second in GT3 class, but he has closed in a little bit on Max Dean. He took a 10th out of him.
It's not on a fast lap right now. That's why he let Timothy Fritsch pass before the bus stop. As he comes across the second timing line, this one probably won't be an improvement. Björn Dennis Kurzer also edged closer to the top of the timing sheets with a 34-0 to his name. Of course, easy to spot in that orange dazzle livery. Just clips the grass and round he goes. Easy to make that mistake. Not as big of a problem in quali as in the race though. And right now we also have a very nice mix of Mercedes and Porsche at the front of GT3s. Still have 6 minutes to go in the session, so plenty of time to get one more quick lap in. We see some drivers have reset to the pits, maybe preparing for their final one, Dennis Kurzer being one of them.
Carlos Salazar taking second in place in GT3 now, beating Kimi Harpler out by 1/100th of a second.
You know, I think Julian Chicot has improved to a 32.7. So increased the gap to the cars behind a bit. Wadoslav preparing for one final one. I see Dennis Kurzer coming out of the pits just behind. Our lone BMW hypercar here today.
Yeah, everyone choosing to go for the Porsche, except for Radoslav, who's gone for the M Hybrid. Makes it easy to find him, at least.
Indeed, very obvious on track with that car. But with these two cars, while they're of course not too far apart from each other, due to the regulations they're bound to, they still have their very own personalities. And I think the BMW there we are back again. What I was saying was the two hypercars, of course, bound to the same regulations, but they still have their own personalities in terms of how they behave, how they drive. And I think the BMW will be a car which will be quite good in the long run. I think it's more forgiving than the Porsche, a bit easier. So
yeah, it does always seem to be a little bit easier to drive, and possibly for longer races like this, a little bit easier on the tyres. Can maybe look after them a little bit better. So it's two approaches.
And of course, over 2 hours of racing, that means consistency is very important. And not just the pure pace. Michael G, meanwhile, got past Dennis Kurzer, so currently Michael G for BST on P3. We got all the bigger 3 teams represented in RENNSPORT, which are taking part in hypercar, that is, on the top 5. In general, NGSRT has a lot of drivers here today, supporting 3 hypercars and 2 GT3s. See Odistan really getting to the edge of the track limits there in turn 1. You can take a lot of different lines through there. Some going a bit wider, some taking it a bit narrower. But it's still Carlos Salazar and Maximilian Dehn on that front row.
Yeah, Salazar and Harpler have swapped places a couple of times. Still not really a lot in it. There's only a 1/10 of a second. Max Dean put in a pretty monstrous 1:43.1, stretching his gap over the front of the field. But Carlos Salazar and Kimi Harpler. They keep swapping who's in second.
Some people are already satisfied with their laps, so the track is getting a bit more open. Michael G having plenty of clean air in front of him. Not really using that one. Cesco Moreira across the line, doesn't improve this time around. Still has one more chance. And also pretty clean air in front of him. The next car in line is Vladislav Pironkovic. Actually, no, it's Dominik Ladler. And I also see that some hypercars are practicing their pit stops.
Definitely something they're going to have to be doing today, so might as well get some practice in if you can.
May become a bit unavoidable indeed. Cesco Moreira 6/10 down in sector 1, but for him to get onto the second row of the grid, he doesn't need that much. So if he can get a good run here through the bus stop, still has a chance to get past Dennis Kurzer. See what the Spaniard can do across the line. Dominik Ladler not improving on his final lap. Cesco Moreira does improve, but it's not enough to take another position. So our grid is set for the Florida Beach 500 of 2025. And we have Julian Chicot on pole in the hypercar class and Maximilian Dehn leading the GT3s to green. Not too many surprises there, right?
No, probably not so much. I think of the controlled environment that is qualifying, you can have a pretty good idea how people are going to do. But that doesn't mean that's how the race will end out.
Very much so indeed. Qualifying is only a tiny bit in an endurance race like this. And of course now we have a little practice session before the race. Some drivers will use it to just cool down a bit. Others will get in some final practice laps.
Maybe tweak their setup if they're going really try-hardy.
Yeah, of course, setups will also be a big part in this. We haven't seen too many long races with open setup yet. This is one of them. And maybe some drivers actually go for different setups. And yesterday in the RNL race, we've actually seen how much impact a different setup can have with the likes of Tim Schroeder and Kimi Harpala. David Baker, we've talked about it before. He's on the wheel in the meantime.
Yeah,
And
he's quite recently made the jump to wheel, so that's going to be pretty freaky for him.
yeah, I mean, indeed, it's interesting going from gamepad to wheel. But he's adapted very well and he's picked up some good pace. He will start 17th overall, that's 9th in class in this race. Has Joel Soria and Tony Etzelsberger in front of him. So I'm looking forward very much what he can do with it. just whenever we've seen him finish off his last lap. Of course, starting 5th with his teammate right beside him actually, so Fenton from NGSRT in 6th makes it an NGSRT 3rd row in Hypercar. OG Stan 3rd best of the AMGs, starting 4th in class. In general, the AMGs having a very good qualifying session. Shall we do predictions for the race, or shall we rather leave it? What do you think?
That's a tricky one. Do we want to do predictions? I don't want to jinx anybody. That's the problem. I kind of want to do it because I enjoy doing predictions, but also my powers are too strong.
Need to contain your jinxing powers. I mean, yesterday we also managed to do it without doing it somehow. So
that's true.
But as Lewis McGlade of course said, there's nothing like the commentator's curse. I think we've proven countless times that it does exist. But I'm, as said previously, very curious to what Radoslav P1 Courage can do in the long run, the BMW. I think it will be interesting between the two different hypercars. We also, of course, have Enrico Bräuninger and Luciano Riccardo going for a car that nobody else gone for, which is the Aston Martin GT3s and Audi R8 GT3. So we have some wild cards in there. And we've seen a quick Audi yesterday.
Yeah, we've got an odd mix of GT3 cars, I suppose. I suppose the 911 is always popular. The AMG seems to be making a bit of a resurgence recently.
Yeah, it's a very good point. There was a time where the AMG wasn't really used, but it has found its place with some people who, of course, always tend to use it. I think OG Stan has been using it for a long time. And, of course, you know, the likes of Tim Schroeder and Ali Zahaya, also Rondon Hood often choosing the AMG. It seems really has found its core player base. And in this case, of course, also with the liveries for it.
Yes.
Making it a very interesting car to look out for. But we are getting ready for the race start.
No BMWs here today, though. For the GT3s, at least.
Not in the GT3 class, that is correct. It will be a rolling start at 90 kph. And I think especially for the hypercars going into turn 1 on cold tires will be very interesting indeed.
Yes. Yeah, the hypercar tires take a while to warm up. So, the first couple of turns, just with a short lead up to the rolling start, can be interesting.
We are rolling. We are seeing Julian Chicot leading the grid to the lines. Well, actually the safety car leading the grid, but him leading the cars that will be racing. Alongside him, Timothy Fridge, who we haven't seen in quite a while, but he's been a member of RENNSPORT for a long, long time. So it's good to see him back in an event like this. Of course, in GT3, we see 3 AMGs in the top 4. Maximilian Dehn leading Carlos Salazar.
Pace car just peeling off.
And we go racing for the Florida Beach 500 of 2025. It's been a good getaway for Julian Chicot. It's been a good getaway as well for OG Stan in the AMG. Up front, Julian Chicot leading them out of turn 1. Timothy Fritsch staying in second. I think Michael G losing out the position to Dennis Kurzer. In the GT3 class, it's still... No, it's Carlos Salazar who took the lead from Maximilian Dehn. Lots of side-by-sides within the GT3 class. A little bit of flashing from Dominic Ladler.
A good clean start from everybody, though. It seems like everyone got away pretty cleanly. With the black AMGs at the front.
Indeed, and we go single file pretty early, but I think that's to be expected in this race. Enrico Borninger seemingly also with a good start. Climbing up to 5th in class, although he's missing a bit of a headlight there. And with this being a 2.4-hour race, of course, this could lead to some interesting situations later on. See a challenge for the lead, Carlos Salazar having to fade to Maximilian, who's going a bit wide, keeping it somehow under control. But now Carlos Salazar coming back at him. Julian Chicot leading at the end of lap number 1 of 87.
Max Dean seems kind of willing to let him hold position there. Plenty of time to make it back if he wants to make a move.
He's looking to the outside already. And he does actually challenge around the outside as well. Does not complete the move as of now, though.
It's a tricky place to try and do it.
And Kimi Hapler is looking very racy.
Yeah, Max Dean going around the outside on turn 1, really let him close up there, because we all know that the 911 is pretty mighty when it comes to braking.
And again, Maximilian Dehn this time on the inside of Carlos Salazar.
That'll put Salazar on the inside for the next corner.
It's only lap 2, so there's plenty more to go, but these two are racing like it's the final lap already. Sasha also looking forward to get closer to the two NG SRT drivers who swap places in slipstream. Timothy Fritsch also slowly wheeling in Julian Chicot up front. And of course great to see for OG Stan and Kimi Hapler, because it allows the both of them to just stay in slipstream with the two leaders.
Yeah, a little bit of battling between the front runners there. Always good for everyone behind. You don't want to let Max Dean have too much of a free rein at the front of a race.
He's got a lot of overlap on the outside, but it doesn't guarantee you a passing move into turn 1. Carlos Salazar is having a look back at it, but I think that is position for Maximilian Dehn in this case. Further down, we see Enrico Borninger holding off Dominic Ladler for now. Luciani Kazu made some progress. I think we unfortunately lost Javier Fernandez, as it seems. And Sasha Unrich in slipstream of Fenton.
You can see the gap slowly closing there. See if you can close it enough.
It's going to the inside, braking very late into turn 1. And the move sticks, so Sasha Unrich up into 6th position. And Carlos Salazar not shaken yet from Maximilian Dehn. Seems like he's just a bit too far away, although the slipstream is very strong here at Daytona. Dominic Lala moving past Enrico Bräuninger for 13th overall. And even with that damage on the front right, Enrico doesn't seem to be too bothered by it. Michael G in 4th, still very qualified. There we see Luciano Icaso trying to hunt down David Beck. He got past Lawrence Peters for 17th. Now trying to hunt down the American.
Yeah, Peters just ran a little bit wide coming into International Horseshoe, and that let Luciano Icaso through. But they've got a good three-way battle going on there.
Meanwhile, Cesc Monera dropped behind Sasha Unrich, with Fenton going past the both of them. But again, in slipstream with a good exit out of bus stop. But David Becker seems to have a very low downforce setup, because that Porsche is fast on the straight. Bit of overlap for the Audi. Both cars very strong on the brakes into turn 1.
Yeah, that Porsche was pretty speedy in a straight line there. He must have gone fairly low downforce to be able to maintain that. Normally the slingshot move on one of the Daytona bankings is pretty much a given.
And it seems like Icaso is much stronger here in the infield section. Able to take much tighter lines. But also up front in the GT3 class, it's still only 4/10 between Max Dehn and Carlos Salazar.
Kimi Harplo had got quite a bit closer, but seems to have dropped back a little bit. I wonder if he maybe pushed it a little bit too hard.
Maybe just trying to get out of the dirty area, a bit of a mistake. Julian Chico leading by 2.5 seconds in the hypercar class. And Dennis Kurzer getting a bit of a visit now from Michael G. It's going a bit wide into the second horseshoe, but keeps it on track.
Yeah, it lost a tenth or so, but he will get a nice slingshot out the corner.
It's one of the hardest traction zones here, and Michael G nearly losing the car because of it. You have so little grip coming back onto the speedway. And especially in the hypercar, it's a big challenge, of course.
Yeah, it's a very bumpy section of track there, so it's difficult to keep your wheels in contact with the rubber properly.
Carlos Salazar here challenging for the lead still. Can basically only slip a piece of paper between the front bumper of him and the rear bumper of Max Dehn. But also these two AMGs.
They've handily both picked the same paint job, but they're not teammates, so it's not a team order situation here. They are just using the same colours.
Well, what it does show, of course, though, is that these two are plenty fast, because to get this livery, of course, you had to qualify for the AMD Esports Series currently running. which these two both did, and therefore received deliveries. Jumping across the curbs in the bus stop. Michael G back to about 8/10 to Dennis Kurzer. Still holding his own in the desert hypercar. And also Dominic Ladler moved up into 4th in class, so he moved past OG Stan after overtaking Enrico Breuninger a couple of laps ago. And we will also get closer to the first lapping maneuvers, because Julian Chicot is getting closer to Joel Soraya. You see the two Porsches just in front.
You get a little bit of peace and quiet when you're in the slower class for the beginning of a race, but once that first faster class car passes you, you know that you're going to have to be on your toes for the next 2 hours. Keep one eye on that rearview mirror at all times. Make sure there's no hypercars behind you.
And we do not grant you the luxury of a full course yellow. It's 2.4-hour racing. And of course, very crucial for Michael G if he wants to move past Dennis Kurzer anytime soon. It's only 7/10 back. And he also gets the slipstream, of course.
I think the interesting bit is going to be when the hypercars catch up with our GT3 frontrunners, because there's still basically nothing between these two guys. And the hypercars getting past cleanly and in a nice place can let this fight continue. But if one gets between them, then that could be an interesting time.
Very much so indeed. Of course, on the banking, the ideal situation to get past Timothy Rich, drifting around the outside of David Baker there. Might have been Tony Esselsberger, that was my mistake. And again, just 2/10 between Carlos Salazar and Max Dehn.
Yeah, Carlos Salazar closed up a lot when they were coming onto the banking there. I don't know whether he was making a move or whether Max Dehn was trying to maybe back him up a little bit so he couldn't carry all of his speed through onto the banking.
Oh, Carlos Salazar getting very loose exiting the bus stop, keeping it on the track into the right direction, but of course it will lose him quite some time. He has to hope to not fall out of the slipstream with that. And Julian Chicot not too far behind.
No, he's just catching up with Kimi Harpler in 3rd place in the GT3.
Carlos Salazar again a bit sideways through the horseshoe. Maybe a bit of a fall off here.
That's going to be less forgiving on his tyres, and like Rip said, it is a long race, so tyre strategy will play a part. And if Carlos Salazar is pushing his tyres all the time to try and keep up or overtake Max Dehn, it will use him out quicker.
Very much so indeed, and maybe a pit stop becomes a well, suitable option here. Maybe Julian Chico is helping him a bit with some slipstream to get closer to Max Dehn again. But the pit lane at Daytona, very long. Of course, you have that 90 kph speed limit instead of the 60 on most European tracks. Still, you lose quite a lot of time doing so.
Yeah, it's a quick pit lane, but it's still, after you've been driving around on the banking here, it feels incredibly slow.
Relatively speaking, it is if you look at the speeds we do on the speedway. The hypercars sometimes getting close to, sometimes surpassing 300 kilometers per hour. It has calmed down a bit since the first lapping maneuvers. Most people trying to just maintain their pace. And the spread within the field is also not too big, especially in the GT3 class.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of room for pit stop shenanigans, that's for sure. Some of the people we have on track today have been known to do some pretty strange pit stop strategies.
Dominic Lada running a bit wide out of the Western Horseshoe. Then his codes are getting passed on the outside, but Audi Stan not too far behind now. That's Michael G coming through, and also Fenton, who's catched up a lot to Michael G.
Yeah, Michael G was trying to overtake Dominic Ladler before and coming up to the Western Horseshoe, and had a bit of a grass tracking moment, which allowed one of the hypercars through and brought him a lot closer to Fenton.
Now Audi Stan in slipstream of the Katowice Porsche. And a very strong slipstream.
Yeah, that Porsche is definitely not running a low downforce setup.
But very strong on the brakes. So keeps the position for now. This is for 4th in class. Currently 3rd is Kimi Harpala. Bit on his own, bit in the Enrico position. Who himself finds himself in a bit of an Enrico position.
Well, at least that's there. Balance is restored. Now Max Dehn has got a bit of gap from Carlos Salazar. It seems to have opened up now. It's 1.7 seconds. Obviously, traffic playing a little bit of a part there.
Radoslav Pionkiewicz overtaking Lawrence Peters, of course, in between the classes. But yes, it's a gap between Max Dehn and Carlos Salazar up front now, 1.7 seconds. We've seen yesterday, however, that tires, depending on the setup, can fall off very differently. Of course, the reference drivers may have not been 100% sober in that instance, but still really much showed towards the end of the race that Tim Schreider's tires in the low downforce AMG did fall off a lot more than on any other car. Daytona not as technical as the Nordschleife, of course, but over 2.4 hour distance, roughly. Could make a big difference. Tony Etzelsberger getting a bit of a visit from Luciano Casus, making his way towards the front, slowly but surely, in the Audi.
Yeah, maybe one of our not so great at qualifying, but fast drivers. About to get a visit from Radoslav Pionkovic in the M Hybrid.
Also again with a bit of a slipstream help here. David Baker also not too far removed from this fight. Going on to the banking again. Of course with GT3 you have the lesser issue of grip out of on the exit of the road course, but still very present. The traction the Porsche provides you does really help with that.
Yeah, it really does have a great drive out of corners with all the weight being at the back with the engine. So on those kind of bumpy sections, it can be pretty helpful.
But we also see that Luciano is slowly closing in. And now in optimal slipstream range, he will dive out of it now, trying to go the long way. And actually clearing Tony Elzelsberger before turn 1.
Yeah, that was an easy slipstream maneuver there. It just seemed to make it look effortless.
That is P7 in class for Luciano Icaso. Dominic Lala having a bit of a cushion now to OG Stan. It will be interesting to see if he can catch up to Kimi Hapla in the long run.
Yeah, as these traffic events kind of start to happen a bit more frequently, the gaps will kind of change around a little bit as people get held up or don't. And it's going to make some of the smaller gaps kind of concertina in and stretch out again. But it'll give people opportunities.
We have 15 laps into this race and we can see that the shadows are getting a bit longer, especially from the grandstands at the start-finish line. So of course we will drive into the night, and we've seen it in previous 2.4 races, as Michael G is getting a bit eager on the gas, losing him quite some time to Dennis Kotzer, but we've seen that the night does have an impact on driver concentration and also mistakes. With yesterday's race in mind, could be the big game changer in this race.
Yeah, it's very bizarre how much the track going to nighttime can change things. It can mess up your driving rhythm. Some drivers are going to be faster at night than others. I don't know how many of these guys practiced at night. Hopefully all of them to some degree. But yeah, it could be a bit of a shock to their system. Maybe more so for the hypercar drivers.
Yeah, we also don't know how much experience each of the drivers have in those circumstances. But it will certainly be interesting, and the Daytona always looks good at night, I think. Those illuminated bankings. Yeah. Currently 18:20 in-game. So there's still quite some time to go until nightfall. But I think what's interesting is that this is technically our first event that's making use of the time or distance rule. So either we go to 87 laps or to 144 minutes, depending on what comes first. I expect 87 laps with the hypercars stacked as they are, and Timothy Fritsch and Julian Chico up front doing a very good pace throughout.
Yeah, I think unless the race director throws in a sneaky full course yellow, I'm not going to do that. Then it probably come to the laps before the time.
Dominic Lala already having about 1.5 seconds over OG Stan. And we know that Dominic Lala tends to be somebody who's taking care of his tires and using them later in the stint, which especially in a race like this could be very crucial later on.
Yeah, with fuel not being really an issue, when people decide to pit will entirely come down to tires, and then we'll get a bit of an idea of how conservatively people have been driving, I think, based on who pits when.
Also the fight for third in Hypercar is very much on. Dennis Kurzer, Michael G and Fenton all having a shot at it. And also Tony Etzelsberger isn't far away from Luciano Ikazu since he passed him. In slipstream with one of the hypercars coming behind. But Luciano very strong on the brakes now into turn 1. Keeping the position for now. What about the fight for P3 though? Only 4/10 between Michael G and Dennis Kurzer. And Max Dehn, meanwhile, over 2 seconds, actually over 3 seconds to Carlos Salazar.
Yeah, his laps aren't that much quicker. His best lap is 1/10 quicker than Carlos Salazar. His last lap is only 1/10 faster than Carlos Salazar. So it must really be down to traffic, either where they've met the traffic or who's just better at dealing with the traffic that's opened this gap up. Kimi Hartpler's running very close to his best lap time right now, so he's definitely keeping on it. Obviously, Dominic Ladler only a couple of tenths shy of his fastest lap as well, and OG Stan had a bit of a bad last lap, I think, with traffic because his time a bit uncharacteristically higher than it normally would be.
Yeah, of course, traffic always plays into that, as Motorslap just went a bit deep into the horseshoe, having to re-overtake Carlos Salazar now on the banking. See a little yellow in the bus stop for Sasha Andrich. He's currently running 7th. Francesco Monera, meanwhile, silently in 5th. And actually, Michael G dropped down to 6th. So he must have had a bigger mistake somewhere. Because he's quite far down from the group where he belonged to. And I also can't see much damage to his car. So maybe just an unlucky spin. Luciano Ikazu was able to break the slipstream to Tony Etzelsberger. Can now fully concentrate on the task ahead, closing in on Enrico Bräuniger. I think one interesting thing in this race, of course, is the difference of driver nationalities we have as well. We have drivers from pretty much all over the world in this race driving together. You can of course see that if you take a look in the app.
Yeah, the app a really good thing to have on while you're watching along here with us. It can tell you some of the statistics about lap times, where people are on laps. You can look at the leaderboards. It's a handy thing, I think, especially for these longer races. It lets you get a bit more of a picture of what's going on in the race.
Fan and RENNSPORTs are approaching some more traffic. And situations like these, Fenton now had to be hesitant with getting onto the throttle compared to RENNSPORTs, which lost him a bit. But it will come back the other way around, so I think the typical rule of thumb is in endurance or multi-class racing that those lapping situations even out over time. So you can't go like, I lost this race because of this unlapping situation or overlapping.
Yeah, it's you can't concentrate too much on individual incidents. You've got driving a car to do.
And so far, everybody seems to do that pretty good. We only lost Javier Fernandez. I'm not sure if he could actually take the start.
He had posted in the Discord that he was having a bit of a hardware issue with the number of cars on track at once. Unfortunately, and that's why he couldn't really continue. He didn't think it would be safe.
Meanwhile, what I'm not sure how safe it will be in a couple of hours in-game time. We see the Aston Martin of Enrico missing the front right headlight. The front left still seems to work fine, but it does hinder visibility in the night, of course. And we are not far away from that. We see the sun is coming down. I think those are the most beautiful hours here at Daytona. As Fenton is hunting down RENNSPORTs.
It'll be fine on the banking sections where it's all floodlit and nice, but I think the first time he comes around in the dark into the infield section, you might get a rude awakening about the amount of track you can see.
Fenton trying to go on the outside of RENNSPORTs into the bus stop. And I think he clipped the wall there.
Yeah, I think he did.
Lost the front right headlight function. Maybe now RENNSPORTs also with the chance to take back third. Now in the slipstream. Won't be quite close enough. But brave movement. Can't talk anymore, and we still have quite a long way to go. But brave move there by Fenton to go the long way around into the bus stop. Timothy Fridge, 9 seconds back from Julian Chico. The gap is growing, but very, very slowly. He's keeping it still within the range of a mistake from the Polish man. Maximilian Dehn out front, leading by 4 seconds meanwhile.
Yeah, the lead in the GT3 is not quite as big as the one in the hypercars right now. 4 seconds is comfortable, but I'm sure Max would prefer it to be a little bit bigger. Last lap round, Carlos Salazar was 2/10ths quicker, but of course, traffic.
and the GT3 field as a whole is still pretty close together. I think the only one who fell off a lap so far is David Baker. Seems to have had an incident somewhere. But apart from that, many people still very close together. Only Stan 6 seconds back from Dominic Lala meantime, so either Dominic Lala really finding some pace or Audi Stan falling off his pace. You can see in the background with the green and yellow Porsche. Kimi Hapler in third. Got to watch a very fun duel, but didn't really have much of his own so far. But the way his car looks, how clean it is, I think it speaks for itself. As the fight for P3 is approaching behind him in hypercar. Now, of course, an ideal situation for Dennis Kutzer, because Fenton has to raid for Kimi Hapler in the bus stop. But I think Dennis Kutzer didn't really have a good exit out of the bus stop. Gets past his teammate at RRT. Hans Peters seems to have picked up a bit of damage to the rear right quarter panel and door. So maybe a bit of a side swipe there somewhere. But we have arrived in the nighttime. Sasha Unrich holding on his own. And going on the grass there. That wasn't, I think, what he planned to do. But seems to have caught it good enough to continue on. In the meantime, we are on lap 24 for the hypercars.
Now, we both know that I think I'm fairly safe bet that the hypercars at least definitely going to have to pit. So when do you think we're going to start seeing pitting maneuvers?
I'm not sure if you can set it as, let's say, a hard deadline. It depends on how well you can take care of your tires, I think. If you can nurse them. Apologies. If you can nurse them well, as Fenton has gone into the pits to repair damage and change tires as we speak.
Yeah, I noticed that just as soon as I said it.
Commentators cursing him once again. But yeah, I think the interesting thing about it is not that you have some windows where you say, okay, I come in this and this and this lap. But rather, when you feel like you can't hold on to the tire if you flat spot it too much, that's more the deadline with the hypercar. I expect if you can hold on to it that people will pit around lap 45, round about that, 45 to 50, so at the halfway mark, a bit behind that. Unless they are feeling very comfortable with the tire, which I think will definitely decide the lead of the race between Julian Tricot and Timothy Pritch. as Fenton is back on his way out of the pits. But apart from that, pretty much how well you could take care of the tires. And some of these drivers have been in more fights than others. So maybe the likes of Dennis Kurzer and Michael G will come in a bit earlier to get some fresh rubber. And Luciano Icaso isn't too far removed from Enrico Bräuninger. It's just 1.5 seconds between the two of them. So that Audi really on a mission here to improve his position.
That's far too rhymey.
Was it?
On a mission to improve his position.
Ah, real poetry around here. And you get all of this entertainment for free. Isn't that nice? But yeah, our Lone Star fighters, if you can say so. Both driving a unique car in this race. Fighting for P14, that's P6 in class. Timothy Fritsch already back to 7.8 seconds to Julian Chicot. Maximilian Dehn so far, of course, having a very good race. But I think it's a bit to be expected from our first 2.4 hour race winner. Back in 2024 on the Nordschleife.
That was a while ago. That seems to have been a long time since we started running those events.
Indeed. And he won the very first of those. Of course, went on to win a lot more races than that, but I think this was the first big one to his name. Also with some very good competition in there for the time. Michael G is still running in 5th around here, so seems to have really settled in after his mistakes.
Got a couple of cars throughout the field driving around with one headlight on, and they're gonna start asking questions now because it's pretty dark. Whether they can continue or not, we'll find out, I guess.
Earlier or later we will, yes. Let's go on board with Luciano Icaso. He's within a second now of Enrico Bräuninger, so soon the slipstreaming will also be a much bigger point. Of course, track limits will also be a bit of a point in this race. You have a good amount of track limit cuts before actually something happens, but you will receive time penalties over time. Which of course you want to avoid, and as it looks currently, those will have quite the impact on the result of the race.
Yeah, none of the gaps are like massive right now, so getting a 5-second or even worse time cut could really start to mess with your position.
Yeah, I mean, the steps we take are in this race drive-through penalties, and the drive-through does quite hurt here at Daytona, so you want to avoid that. But so far, doesn't seem like anybody has an issue with that. We are now solidly into the night at 10 PM in-game time.
Luciano Ocasio seems to be slowly catching up with Enrico Bräuninger here. Who is it? Is it my place to commentate on whether or not it's headlights based or not? I don't know. Let's just say it is headlights based.
See where you're coming from it. Luckily, of course, Daytona does have lighting throughout. Even on the infield where you don't have that much, you still have a bit.
Yeah, it's not completely pitch dark.
It's not an issue for Luciano Icasa though, because his car is crispy clean. Even though he has overtaken, I think, 4 cars this race already. Not a single scratch on that thing.
Yeah, he's kept it very clean.
And of course we like to see an Audi on track. I think we said it quite a few times in the live streams.
There's no commentary bias here, but Audi's on track good.
But same goes for Enrico, who just ran a bit wide in T1. We know him as somebody who usually takes the Aston Martin, which is always great to see. Gives us some variety on track. I think also that Shark Livery at night looks absolutely adorable. Adorable is probably the wrong word for a quite menacing looking car, but it is a very cool looking car, especially blacked out like this on the rear. And having these two fight now on screen, I think is nice to watch.
With the kind of like the shape of the grille and the mouth on there, it's got a bit of a hint of a certain Porsche livery, which I'm pretty sure everybody also loves.
Not sure what you could be referring to. Is a shark a prehistoric animal? I mean, they are very old.
They are very old, that's for sure. You could maybe say it is.
Sharks can be considered prehistoric animals. They first appeared in the fossil record over 450 million years ago. So, ladies and gentlemen, you will learn some stuff about historic animals here today as well. Some interesting trivia to be had. Slav Pironkovic putting a lap on the Audi and now the Aston Martin.
It's just sitting nicely between this fight for now. Maybe giving Luciano Ocasio a little bit of extra draft though, and he's going to hold up Enrico Bräuninger just a little bit.
Which is very convenient for Ocasio, of course. But he has to settle in behind for now.
Bräuninger moving to cover that off as quickly as he was able there. He wanted to make sure Ocasio didn't even try it.
But in much closer proximity now coming onto the bankings. Will he make a move into the bus stop already? Yes, he does. He goes to the inside. Brakes a lot later. Can he get it turned? Yes, he does. And it's a clean move there for Ocasio to get past Enrico Bräuninger.
The bus stop moves are always tricky to pull off properly because it's just making the kind of right-hand turns. It can be very, very difficult if you're pushing the limits of your braking.
Yeah, and you always have the chance to come back as Enrico Bräuninger is trying now going around the high side. But I think Ocasio is also running a bit lower downforce because he is very strong on the straight. We've seen that previously with his fight against Tony Etzelsberger, and Enrico there with a big drift, but catching it in time.
That was a good save by Enrico there, and I was worried it was heading towards the wall for a second.
Indeed it did. In the meantime, Timothy Pritch 6 seconds back from Julien Chicot. He's seemingly quite a bit quicker in the long run of things. You see the 11 car, that is Sasha Unrich in the pits as well. Possibly repairing some damage. But yeah, there of course also was some traffic, but overall, maybe Timothy Fritsch having the upper hand in the long run here.
Julien Chicot's last lap was a 136.5, whereas Timothy Fritsch's was a 135.1, so he made some good time up in, if it was traffic, last lap.
It's not easy to get past two cars. I mean, they're not directly fighting, Lawrence Peters and David Baker. Peters in the beta liveried Porsche, Baker in the platinum liveried Porsche, because they're on different laps. But still, of course, this is endurance racing, this is multi-class racing. You don't have to get out of the way. You can defend your lap. And they also have, I think, OG Stan coming up behind them. Vladislav Pironkiewicz, meanwhile, with also now Michael G into the pits. So it's what we've been talking about, but he moved up into 5th position, and it's exactly what we've talked about in qualifying, if you remember. Seems to have a very steady race, moving up the field.
Sasha Andrik just leaving the pit lane now.
Coming out behind Enrico Bräuninger on track. Max Dehn in the lead of the GT3 field, quite a gap now to Carlos Salazar, about 9 seconds.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's just able to deal with traffic a little bit better than Salazar or not, but he just seems to be slowly pulling ahead. Their lap times still very, very similar. So it must just be on traffic management, really.
Oh, and Timothy Fritsch. Timothy Fritsch spun exiting the horseshoe. That will throw him quite a way back, and it also doesn't help with the flat spots on the tires. Lost him about 10 seconds to Julien Chicot.
Yeah, the flat spots, I think, probably be the biggest problem coming out of that. Hypercar's on their 34th lap right now, so they've got a little bit to go before they're halfway through the race. If he was aiming to swap at somewhere around the halfway mark, then he might soldier on, but also he might consider popping in early and getting rid of those hideous bumps.
Yeah, it really depends on what he did during the spin. If he locked the brakes, if he tried to spin it around. Both doesn't quite help, but all depending on that. But Julien Chicot out front, maybe a bit of a relief for him. Carlos Salazar soldiering on in 10th overall, that's second in class. And Enrico Bräuninger still soldiering on with that one headlight. Probably eating some nuggets while racing. He told me that yesterday. So he definitely won't have a starving problem in this race. With one of the hypercars in his mirror, that is the true car. Not the true car, the 12 probably of Cesco Monoria, yes it is. And we also see quite some fluctuation now in the lap times of the GT3s, right?
Yeah, they are kind of like bobbing up and down a little bit with the traffic. I'm trying to kind of make some sense out of them. but it's kind of difficult right now. As they do kind of fluctuate up and down. Carlos Salazar's last lap, not so great, but I think that was pretty much a traffic situation for him. I'm trying to find where he is on track. Oh, he's just about to come around and finish a lap. No, he isn't.
He's currently on NASCAR 3 and 4.
Yeah. So I'll get a better idea of a bit more of a clean lap time for him from that.
Kimi Hapline third in class. Generally a bit slower than the two leading cars, which are, as I said, depending on traffic, faster or slower, but generally quicker. But I think he also doesn't really have to worry about Dominic Ladler behind overall, who himself was able to build a 6-second gap to OG Stan. So after a very, very tight front pack at the start of the race, it faded out a bit after 1 hour of racing.
Yeah, Carlos going back through it, a clean lap there. Again, in fact, 1/10 quicker than Max Dean in the last lap. So not too bad. Kimi Harpler, I think, had a bit of a traffic-laden last lap, so his last lap was a 1:45.2. Dominic Ladler 1:44.9. OG Stan 1:44.2. Luciano Icardo also 1:45.2. Although he's just gone round at a 1:51.1, so that's not a great one. Lawrence Peters now in the pits. I think that's the first GT3 we've seen pitting.
Indeed, let me see if I can find him. There we see Luciano Icardo. Oh, he also has collected quite some front end damage, and that will hinder his top speed. So not ideal for him. Sasha Unrich, I think, slowly closing in on Michael D. These two have been in the pits. So Fenton, Michael D. and Sasha Unrich, the 3 hypercars in the pits. Trying to unlap himself from Dennis Kurzer. That is the orange 963 in front.
Lawrence Peters dropped off the jacks and then instantly DNF'd. Not sure what happened there.
We will try to find out. Seems like even with the damage on Ikazu's car now, that Enrico Bräuniger isn't quite able to go the same pace as the Audi. But of course, with the cars generally being a bit further apart now, it makes the maneuvering through traffic a bit easier. Was Timothy Fritsch getting past the two of them? And we also still have 18 out of 20 cars running in this race, so... And actually 18 out of 19 who were able to take the start. And that is, I think, David Baker running a bit wide in the bus stop in front of Radoslav Bironkovic. Just Conrad driving around with a pretty damaged 963 on the front right.
Yeah, that's not looking too healthy, is it?
Looks a bit like it was damage caused by the walls of Daytona rather than a different car.
It's going to mess with his aero a little bit, and not to mention he has 0 working headlights now.
Which, last time I checked, didn't help driving in the night. We are just past midnight, so there's still quite some hours left to go in the dark. No issue though for Dominic Lala, because he has very well-functioning headlights. Same for Julian Chicot. It of course is the first event where we incorporated a separate qualification. We have done something like it for the R1 Runners-Up Cup quite some time ago, if you remember. About a year ago, I think that was. With that absolutely insane move done by Nico Nüninghoff at Spa. Going down the inside at Spa to take, I think, 11 positions. But yeah, I think so far it worked out very well. Have a good mix of drivers here.
Yeah, and it seems to have especially helped with the hypercar field, having a few more numbers. We've done some hypercar GT3 races a few times, but it's never been quite this high in participation in the hypercar before, so it's really good to see those screaming hybrid cars zipping around Daytona here, past all the GT3s, humbling them a little bit.
Generally, also thanks from us for participating in this qualification time. We had over, I think, 250 entries and over 600 logged lap times. So yeah, the interest is definitely there, and for us this is of course a great sign to keep on with events like this. There will be more in the future, definitely. And yeah, I'm so far really enjoying this race. It's a good multi-class Daytona race. Miklala coming up to David Baker. This is not for position, of course. But coming closer to the end of the year, maybe we'll do something at Jeddah, because we of course offer, I think except for the F1 games, are the only game that offers Jeddah. And the GTWC of course does their 6 hours of Jeddah. And last year watching that was a lot of fun, so why not do it here on RENNSPORT as well, but more on that later in this year. Maybe just a little hint at it. Meanwhile, up front, Timothy Fritsch seems to have recovered from his incident very well. He's only 3.6 seconds back from Julian Chicot, well within viewing range. And generally it seems like Timothy Fritsch has much better pace right now.
Yeah, he seems to be really closing up on Julian Chicot. I wonder if he's just got better nighttime pace, perhaps. Or Julian Chicot's got some tyre gremlins and is taking it a bit easier, but the gap is closing up pretty rapidly.
Yeah, and we've seen that before, right? When cars came to life in the night. Oh, but just as we talk about Timothy Fritsch going across the grass.
Ooh, that was a close one.
That, of course, was not his plan, lost him a lot. But it seems like he won't have to fear any long-run issues about it, but it just cost him quite some time. But knowing he has the pace, it shouldn't unsettle him too much. We are just approaching halfway distance. And, yeah, there's still a lot of time to watch it. If you want to rewatch the race after the stream, as this question just came up in chat, you can do that on Twitch within the next week, or they will also be exported to YouTube, to the Krystall Productions channel. So you will find all the important VODs over there.
If you just search for it in YouTube, I'm sure it'll come up. you'll be able to see all of our community races on there. So it's a pretty easy channel to find.
And I'll just ask in the Discord.
Yeah. Timothy Frisch coming into the pits.
Exactly at halfway mark. So maybe decided after the 2 excursions to switch tires, start off new. And who knows, Julian Chicot still has a long way in front of him. We are just past the halfway mark, so let's do a little 250 points raffle for the 250 kilometers driven. Just enter by typing !join to win some REN points here for the Twitch channel. It will be very interesting to see if any further GT3s decide to pit. Timothy Fritsch now on his way out of the pit lane.
It's just lost second place to Dennis Kurtzer.
Should come out well ahead of Cesco Moreira. And he's not too far behind Dennis Kurtzer.
Well, you'll have a nice fresh set of tyres on there, and once he gets them up to temperature, I'm sure we'll see his lap times back up to what they were before.
I think Kurtzer and Fritsch also have plenty of experience fighting each other, so it won't be the first time we see these two battle. But Dennis Kurtzer himself is on a very good way towards a good podium position here.
Max Dean just setting his fastest lap of the race with a 1:43 dead. So maybe got a little help from some slipstream along the way, but I'm sure he'll take it.
Definitely won't complain about it. I think Dennis Kurtzer is about to put a lap on Radoslav Pivankovic, one of the most experienced drivers in RENNSPORT, has over 260 pole position and 290 race victories in official races, so you can of course kinda know how many races he has done. And always a good midfield contender as well in the race, but in the hypercar seems to feel very, very comfortable running in second, of course, currently in front of Timothy Fritsch.
Yeah, he does seem to be one of the people who always goes hypercar if it's an option, so he seems more than happy to take a bit of a hypercar position.
Radoslav Pivankovic is running a bit wide there, trying to let Timothy Fritsch pass. Actually, you corrected us on yesterday, if you've seen it. We, of course, thought he was going slowly to not, or to avoid accidentally crashing into either Enrico or Dominic, but actually corrected us and said he just spun, exiting Gallenkopf, and then couldn't accelerate with the damage he had.
Timothy Fritsch right on the back of Dennis Kurtzer now. He's got a good draft.
And again into the bus stop, but Dennis Kurtzer much late on the brakes, a bit too late perhaps. Running a bit wide.
Well, he took the safe option. He didn't try to turn it in, and he managed to come out of that without an incident, which is good.
Question will be if Julian Chicot comes in, does a pit stop, because Timothy Fritsch on fresh tires seems to be able to extract good pace out of his car.
Yeah, he's not quite up to his top pace yet, but he's getting there. Julian Chicot, obviously, we've passed the halfway point in laps for him. So if he's going to pit for tyres, you'd think it would be somewhere around about now.
But Dennis Kurzer is in the pits to change tires. Now where does this leave him in relation to Cesco Monuera? Because he's currently in NASCAR 3 and 4. So he will come out behind.
Kurzer is also repairing some damage while he's in the pits. So he's going to have a bit of a longer pit stop than just a boots and out.
Cesco also coming into the pits and actually just DNF from the race. I'm not quite sure what was up with that. The next car in line is Radoslav Pironkiewicz. He's a bit further behind Dennis Kurzer.
Kurzer just moving now, making his way to the pit exit.
Radoslav is not alone though at the moment, because Fenton is getting closer. These two, of course, teammates.
OG Stan in the pits. It's another GT3.
Oh, and Fenton just ever so slightly missing out on hitting, well, essentially his team boss in turn 1. I think he didn't anticipate Radoslav braking a bit earlier, but Radoslav letting him through here. That was a close call between the two of them, though.
Yeah, it's never a good idea to hit your teammate. so I'm sure there was some clenching going on there.
David Baker still out there, driving consistent lap times.
Yeah, his lap times look pretty nice and even right now. He's a bit off the back as far as track position is concerned, but it's always good to see people driving around, and I'm sure he'll be getting some valuable experience on using his wheel.
Sasha Andrich seems to have had a longer pit stop somewhere, because he is now behind the two leading AMGs in GT3, so it will not take long for him to catch back up. Dominic Lala, of course, now without any threat from behind. Julian Shiko still without a pit stop. I think alongside Radoslav Pironkiewicz, the only hypercar to not have done a pit stop yet. Timothy Fridge still around 72 seconds behind Julian Chicot. Got this fresh set of rubber. Yes, Dennis Kurzer right in front of him now again, even though there's a lap between them again. Tony Etzelsberger, 7th in class. Also still having a very solid pace. The car looks to have not received even a slight bump.
Yeah, he seems to have a nice factory fresh Porsche, which I'm sure will be feeling pretty good round about now.
Don't think anybody would complain about it.
No.
Fenton actually going after Julian Chicot. They are a lap separate from each other. I think he also fall behind Radoslav Pironkiewicz again. But he has the pace to go with Julian Chicot, I think, for quite some time.
Yeah, if you can grab onto one of the leaders like that as they're passing you, and maybe use it as a bit of a learning experience, you can gain a bit of an insight and also just benefit from a bit of a tour for a while.
Eugenio Kazu, who of course started quite far back on the grid. I think he was second to last in GT3. He moved up to 5th in class. It's 7 positions gained in this race so far.
Sasha Andrik just catching up with Carlos Salazar, which technically 4 positions, so he doesn't have to get out the way. But I'm imagining he will.
Well, I wouldn't defend from a hypercar, even if it was on the same lap. Doesn't sound like a logical thing to do, but he will fly by on the banking on the high side anyway. Even though the 2 leading AMGs of Dane and Salazar with their lone downforce setups do have quite some good pace on them.
Timothy Fritsch currently lapping about a second a lap faster than Julian Shakur. I know we were saying before he went in for his tyres that he seemed to be catching him up pretty rapidly. That still seems to be the case. Now he's got up to speed. Julian Shakur has got a really bad lap time. He's in the pits.
He's in the pits?
Yeah. He's just coming out of the pits right now.
But
I didn't catch what he...
It doesn't seem like he stopped.
Did he have a drive-through?
Of course, that could have been the case. We'll quickly check that.
Can't see anything in the penalty log. In fact, he's hardly been off the track. So I would very much doubt he's got a drive-through.
I wonder if he just changed tires and Timothy Fritsch refueled as well.
I think Timothy Fritsch fixed a little bit of damage. The gap between them down to 15 seconds now, so that's definitely race on as far as Timothy Fritsch is concerned, who's only just going slower than his fastest lap time. His fastest so far has been a 1:33.4, and his last lap was a 1:33.7. So he's speeding along pretty healthily right now.
Of course, there are now 2 questions to be asked. One is that Timothy Fritsch took a few laps until he got the tires fired up. How will it behave with Julian Shakur? And also, can Julian Shakur extract the same pace out of the new tires as Timothy Fritsch can, as Fenton is back in the pits for a second time? So some people going for the 2 lap time or for the 2 pit stops. I wonder if Radoslav is going to come in.
Fenton has a very, very long repair time right now. He's got 2 minutes in the pits repairing his car, so I'm guessing he had a bit of an oops moment.
Well, after 1 hour and 20 minutes of driving, I think you are forgiven to have that in the hypercar. But for Radoslav, I mean, his race so far is unfolding beautifully for him. He's up into P4. Of course, is a lap down, but that isn't too much of an issue for him here.
No, I think realistically, if he could overtake Dennis Kurtzer, he'd still be very, very happy with that. With Timothy Fritsch and Julian Shakur being kind of in a bit of a speed bracket of their own. So I don't think he'd be too fussed about the fact that he's not really going to catch them unless something goes bad. But he seems to be having a really good race, just sticking to his own pace, keeping it clean, keeping out of trouble. Which we seem to do pretty often.
Yeah, indeed. Sasha Unrich about to overtake Kaza and also not too far away from Max Dane to get the GT3 field behind him again. Another minute of waiting for Fenton. I'd actually drop him behind Sasha Unrich as well. Not quite.
Sasha's just finishing the infield section of the track, so...
I think there's a further lap between the two of them, though, if I'm not mistaken.
They're currently on the same lap, apparently.
Then it is the case, yes.
Only 30 seconds to go before he's back on track. Fenton will be watching that number 11 coming around the corner pretty intently.
There we see the position change. Fenton still to be released from the jacks.
He's got 10 seconds to go. He's going to be itching for that. I can see his throttle bouncing.
Oh, was that... No. 13 car of Joe Soraya who just... had a bit of an off in the bus stop. Seems like he can go out. He's lost the front left headlight. So
the front left in general.
Well, he pretty much exactly cut out around the headlight, which is very precise. And he's coming in predictably to fix the damage. Fenton is back out on the track. Has Timothy Fritsch just behind him. Of course on a different lap. And we are not too far away from getting some sunlight again here on the track.
Yeah, I think Timothy Fritsch had a couple of bad laps as far as traffic was concerned, because his lap time seemed to have dwindled a little bit, and Julian Shakur's got back up to speed on those new tyres. So the gap has opened up a little bit between those two.
Audi Stan after his pit stop, still about 20 seconds behind Tony Etzelsberger. And has Kimi Harpler just behind him. Who generally seems to be a bit quicker, even with the old tires. And Scorza is going right between the two of them.
Oh. Always a sketchy move when you see that happening. But fair play for trying it. David Baker currently in the pits for the GT3s. He's got a little repair job, nothing too major, so he should be out on track and back moving again.
Meanwhile, in terms of race distance, we are currently on lap 53 out of 87. So we have about a third of a way to go, a bit more than that. And as it seems right now, we will be finished well within the 144-minute time window. But there's also still plenty of time for Timothy Fritsch and Julian Chico.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot going on with pit stops and traffic messing around, so there's opportunities for them to make some inroads into the respective gaps. David Baker now moving again. He came off the jacks and was completely still for a while there. Wasn't really sure what was going on, but he is moving.
Could see him coming through the pit. I really like the pit exit here at Daytona. Although it can be a bit obnoxious with how long it is, but seeing your people or the people you pass on the inside is kind of cool. And also sets up for nice pit exit moves. But also with Fenton now having let Timothy Fridge pass, may free up the German a bit to catch up to Julian Checo up front. Julian Checo so far the only driver to go within the 132s, which is also interesting.
Yeah, I think on out-and-out pace, he seems to have a definite advantage on everybody. Then Timothy Fridge seemed to be really catching him up, but I think after the new set of tyres, Shakur seems to be back on it again. He's still not really close to his 132 pace. He's running 133, high 133s. Whereas Timothy Fridge, I think, is getting caught up in a lot of traffic right now. Whereas Julian Shakur seems to have a bit more clean air ahead of him.
How Stan actually quite the pace of Kimi Harplan now since the man from Sweden passed him. And it may help him just getting closer to Tony Etzelsberger, who himself seems to be slowly closing in on Enrico Bräuninger, just 6 seconds between the two of them.
Yeah, the last lap round, Etzelsberger was 2/10s quicker than Enrico Bräuninger, which it'll take a while for him to catch up, but it's the gap closing, which is, I think, as we said yesterday, nobody ever wants to see a gap closing behind you. So it does add a little bit of pressure. At the front of the field, we've got Salazar, Harpler and Ladler are all running in the 44s. Max Dean still running in 43s.
Yeah, at the start of the race, it really looked like Salazar could challenge Max Dean. He had very, very strong pace. I think in the long run, it was just Max Dean having the upper hand on it. Maybe having a setup that is a bit less tire eating, maybe a generally just slightly more preservative driving style. We know that he has a lot of history in endurance racing.
Yeah, he's definitely an experienced guy when it comes to doing long stints. It's not something that's new to him, and he knows how to set up a car ready for it. Unfortunately, David Baker DNFing out of the race now. It was thank you for driving. It was great to have you on board and lapping around.
Yeah, but still a very respectable race for him as well. I just gotta mention that.
Yeah, for sure.
As Max Dean is now also getting past Oh, that is actually not Josue, he's still a bit further behind. That is Timothy Fridge, who's, I think, for the first time in quite some laps, catched on to Julian Chico. He's now back within the 18 seconds. 30 laps to go. I think the fight for the lead in this race in Hypercar is far from over.
Yeah, Timothy Fritsch seems to be determined to kind of keep it exciting until the end there, because his last lap was over a second quicker than Julian Chicot. So that's really eaten into the gap between them.
Tony Etzelsberger also gaining another second or half second on Enrico Bräuninger, so seems to really have consistent pace. Enrico Bräuninger just dropping off a bit. Think about now is also the last chance to really make a pit stop if you want to.
Yeah, the Hypercar's on 58 laps now. So we're getting into kind of the last third of the race, that's for sure. Julian Chicot just dodging and weaving around Dominic Ladler, trying to find some space.
We see Radoslav Pironkovic just behind. We see, I'm not quite sure who is it, the 11 of Sasha Unrich just in front. Dominic Ladler somewhere in between of that. Also the 13 of Joel Soria just in front of these cars. So right now the absolute worst traffic situation for Julian Chicot. But of course Timothy Fritsch has to get through it as well.
Yeah, for sure. He might not have it immediately, but he will have to deal with it. It just seems to be a bit of a perfect storm of everybody all at the same place at once.
Kazu still carrying on with that damaged front end. Doesn't seem to stop him too much. Didn't gain on Dominic Ladler, but he also didn't lose out to Enrico Bräuninger. Now has Dennis Kurzer coming up behind him. And I think that maybe... It's not Max Steen, it's Carlos Salazar. Putting a lap on him.
Yeah, Carlos Salazar picking up his pace a little bit. He's got back into the 43s now. Max Dean having a bit of a traffic-heavy lap, so he ran a 44. The gap between them still only 17 seconds. Tony Elsberger 4 seconds behind Enrico Bräuninger as well. So the GT3 still got some fight left in them.
Fenton about to pick up the last GT3s that technically is in front of him. Max Steen, of course, leading in GT3. But as I said, Tony Etzelsberger even closer now, even within the 3-second range of the Aston Martin. I think OG Stan also closed in a bit on Tony Etzelsberger, not as at a very fast rate, but he did cut it down to about 15 seconds now. So if he continues with that, he's still running together with Kimi Hapala. Maybe a shot at taking back P14 overall. And that should be P7 in class.
Yeah, OG Stan lapping about a second faster than Tony Elsberger, who's lapping about a second faster than Enrico Bräuninger. So the gaps there are closing down a little bit. And I'm sure we'll see some action come from that shortly. The seesaw at the front of the hypercar race continues, with Julian Chicot now lapping a little bit quicker than Timothy Fritsch as the traffic comes and goes.
can also see a very, very slight hint of red in the sky, because we are now at 6 AM in-game time, so soon we will have some daylight back. And I think some of the drivers will be very happy about that. If you watch to the top of your screen, you will be able to see the blimp, which is also illuminated at night. The orange RENNSPORT blimp. Michael G is also closing in on Radoslav Pironkovic for 4th. Michael G, of course, very strong in the opening phases, dropped down a bit after some mistakes, but he's pretty much back on it in the last few laps. Lapping even quicker than Dennis Kurzer, but that gap, if nothing further happens, is I think a bit too big to overcome on pace.
Benton and Sasha Andrich at the back end of the hypercar field lapping pretty much identical lap times right now. They were a little bit further apart on best lap time, but the current lap time, they seem to be kind of identical.
Oh, Michael G running very wide in the horseshoe, keeping it out the tire barriers, so that is a good thing for him.
That'll give Radoslav Pironkovic a bit more of a safety blanket.
Indeed it does. Timothy Fritsch and Julian Chicot currently on lap 61. The only two cars in hypercar left on the lead lap for the moment. Just crossing the line to start lap 62. As we see the sky becoming a bit brighter and the sun rising.
Yeah, just coming up to 6:45 in-game time, so the sun showing itself a little bit more. People will be able to breathe a little sigh of relief, try and get back used to their old braking references from daytime. So there'll probably be a little fluctuation in pace for the next few minutes as people try to get back into it.
On board with Julian Chicot, our race leader.
Julian Chicot doing a purple sector 2 in that lap, so he is not messing about. He's still trying to push for pace.
Timothy Fritsch coming up to the fight. 4P6 in GT3. The platinum liveried Porsche in front of us, that is Ed Sitzberger. The very dark Aston Martin, that is Enrico Bräuninger. And it's less than 2 seconds now between the two of them, as both Władysław Piłonkiewicz and I think it was Sasha Andrich running a bit wide in the second horseshoe.
I think Tony Elsenberger will be trying to pray for a little bit of extra boost as Timothy Fritsch goes past. Anything he can use to creep a little bit closer to Enrico Bräuninger.
With a bit of damage that Enrico has, even though it may not have any short-term impact in any 45-minute race, you probably wouldn't notice, but over a race of this distance, you probably do notice with the slight lack of top speed. It just adds up, and Tony Etzelsberger has been slowly creeping in on him for quite some time. Just shows that consistency can be very rewarding. As it's getting brighter and brighter. We're on lap 64 for the leaders in this race, so we have 23 more laps. Should finish this race on distance instead of time. And of course consistency applies to any circumstances, but some consistent manners are more advantageous than others. Consistently being involved in wrecks perhaps doesn't help your situation. But it also has consistency, so it counts for something, I guess. But as you can see on Tony Etzelsberger's car, not a scratch, kept it clean throughout. He had some fights, especially with Luciano Caso. As Julian Chicot had a big off in the second horseshoe.
Yeah, he missed his breaking point there and skipped across the grass. He's bound to have a bit of damage coming out of that, besides the visual damage. Didn't immediately lose a bunch of time, but that can't help his pace.
Lost him 4 seconds, and with that distance left to go, 16.5 seconds really isn't a lot. And we can see how much Timothy Fritsch is cutting down that advantage on the straights. Julian Chicot is not going into the pits to repair the damage, though. He is trying to continue with it. Because repairing means he will lose the lead guaranteed to Timothy Fritsch.
Yeah, you would definitely lose the lead if you went into the pits. And he does have the fastest lap of the hypercars by quite a margin, to be honest. So if he... The problem is we don't know how long the repair time will be, but I'm guessing it'll probably be insurmountable for him.
Well, even just driving through the pits will definitely cost him the...
Yes, yeah, it's more the amount of extra time he'll lose on top of that.
Tony Etzelsberger sending it down the inside of Enrico Bräuninger. Nice move to get up into 13th. 6th in class. Enrico's not quite done yet. Sending it down the inside into the first horseshoe. Slight bit of contact. And Enrico Bräuninger is back in front of the two.
Enrico Bräuninger no longer in the Enrico Bräuninger zone. He's now got some action going on around him.
Yeah, very much so indeed. But with the pace advantage Tony has, should be able to close back in. Just did some small calculation with the 20 laps we had remaining just a moment ago. Timothy Fritsch just needs 3/4 of a second per lap to catch up to Julian Chicot. That is around the benchmark.
So the last lap round, the difference was 0.8 seconds. Timothy Fritsch's lap was a little bit slower than he has been doing recently. I'll try and keep you updated as the kind of pace evens out a little bit more. But Julian Chicot doesn't seem too badly affected.
Tony Etzelsberger at it again. Enrico Bräuninger this time being the late breaker of the two. Again braking very late, opening the door down the inside for Tony to take the position. We drag race. And again Enrico is staying in front, now into the second horseshoe.
Of course, these two battling is playing into the hands of Urji Stan, whose last lap was 2 seconds faster than either of them, and there's only an 8-second gap between them.
That is indeed so very, very true. And for the GT3s as well, still about 12 to 13 laps on the cards. If these two still fight for a couple more laps. Now Tony Etzelsberger trying to use the slipstream of Dennis Kurzer. Not quite able to do so. And OG Stan has the much fresher tires compared to these two as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Sending it down the inside. And again, drag racing down the backstretch. I think Tony has it this time.
Yeah, Tony Etzelsberger closing the door there, but not into the next horseshoe.
And here we go again. And that is another second for OG Stan. Oh, Enrico very loose onto the banking. Tony Etzelsberger wasn't really able to capitalize on it. He couldn't get a run on the Aston Martin. Although he is slightly alongside into the bus stop. It wouldn't be the first bus stop move we've seen. Enrico going very, very deep. Etzelsberger preparing a very good exit out of bus stop. Now in the slipstream. A lot more speed.
Maybe pulled out a little bit too early there and hadn't quite built up enough overspeed. But he is creeping up.
He still has the momentum. So he's fully alongside now going into turn 1. But again, Enrico just super strong on the brakes into turn 1. Does he have him for good now?
It's been very detrimental to their lap time. OG Stan now only 4 seconds behind. I think the gap might be pretty big now, unless Enrico can get us a good draft and really close things up.
And the thing is, of course, Kimi Harpler is in between. Oh, I think OG Stan just went off the road behind them. We see yellow flag, we see the 8 car. That is OG Stan who spun in the horseshoe. So all the good work basically gone in an instant.
Yeah, that gap opened back up to nearly 10 seconds. Gutting for OG Stan. Although it frees Enrico up to be a bit more reckless with an attempt to get back into it.
Now Enrico with a good chance.
Back at the head of the hypercars, Julian Shakur back running in the 33s and maintaining that gap at 15 seconds right now. He seems to be not phased at all by the front quarter panel being missing on his car.
And he's just coming up to the fighting pair here. Enrico couldn't quite make the move stick. Now Julian Shakur has to somehow find his way through. And he can't, and that is what will cost him time. But also Timothy Fridge, of course, has to get through it.
It seems to have not really hindered that fight between Elsberger and Bräuninger, despite sandwiching between them for a second.
Timothy Fridge also lost a massive amount of time in Sector 1 because he's suddenly 25 seconds back from Julian Shakur.
Can't see anything wrong with his car.
Maybe just running right in the horseshoe like we've seen a couple of times.
Yeah, maybe. He's not around anybody, so I can't think it would have been due to anybody else. So yeah, maybe just a bit of user error.
You know, Radoslav Pironkovic was in the pits, so the last of the hypercars to come into the pit lane. He has some damage on the rear right. He didn't elect to repair it, so it doesn't seem to bother him too much, and he still has a bit of a gap to Michael G, who's now also trying to get past this fighting pair, and Kimi Harpler now having to try to somehow get through all of this. Bit of a drift there for Enrico Bräuninger. Oh, and there's contact between Harpala, Michael G, and I think also Tony Etzelsberger.
It's getting very congested there coming into the second horseshoe. And I'm sure Michael G will want to be out and past this as quickly as possible.
Surely will. Kimi Harpler also wants to move past Etzelsberger as fast as possible. But of course, Tony doesn't want Enrico to have a shot at retaking the position he fought so hard for.
Fenton, our last place hypercar right now, is currently lapping about a second quicker than Sasha Andrik, and there's 10-second gap between them, so that is closing pretty rapidly.
Yeah, Fenton had the pace throughout. I think it was more the general mistakes that happened from time to time.
OG Stan, after making his mistake, he's got the gap back down to just under 6 seconds. So he's keeping up with the Etzelberger-Bräuninger fight.
Yeah, I think, of course, very much helped by both Enrico and Etzelsberger fighting for a lot, and also that situation with Michael G, which was just too many cars in one place. Kimi Hafler a lap up as well, just in between the two of them. Made it very hard to maneuver around. But yeah, 4.5 seconds.
Fritsch is in the pits. He's just leaving the pits now. I don't think he's not got to worry about the Dennis Kurtzer gap behind him, but so maybe he just ruined his tires and has decided to play it safe and go in for a pit stop.
Maybe he's going for a fastest lap. But
maybe he's going for fastest lap.
He also, I don't think Julian Chicot will come in to repair the damage now, but maybe he does with the cushion. Oh, and Radoslav Pironkovic is spun round in turn 1. Julian Chicot had to avoid it. I think it was Carlos Salazar who was also in between them.
Well done to everyone for avoiding that, not making it worse.
And Michael G is just 2 seconds now behind Radoslav Pironkovic, who just came out of the pits. And we also see the 13 car, Joel Soraya. Stationary. He's driving again. Maybe we just had sort of a bit of an issue.
OG Stan is 4 seconds again behind Enrico Bräuninger.
Oh, Tony Etzelsberger just dropped down the order again. Behind OG Stan. Merged right behind the Mercedes.
I think I was just flicking through the drivers and saw him off track. He seems to be back and moving now.
Joe Soraya seems to have some sort of technical issue because he was stationary again at the exit of the road course.
Yeah, he pulled well out of the way, so it was a nice, safe move.
Now the question for Etzelsberger is, can he keep up with OG Stan to maybe capitalize on him fighting with Enrico Bräuninger, just like Stan did the other way around?
Yeah, true.
Of course, due to the pit stop of Timothy Fitch, I think he's still actually on the lead lap, so we still have 2 cars on the lead lap. You see, the gap is coming down quickly, so while it won't be enough if Julian Chicot were to pit now, even if it was just for tires, I think Timothy Fitch would overtake him. With 15 laps left to do in this race, unlikely he will.
Yeah, for sure. But we have 2 very close gaps in the hypercars right now. Radoslav Pironkovic is pretty close to Michael G.
He's
Michael
just
G
in the pits.
going quicker.
He
was
very close, yes, but
it was close. But also Fenton is quite close to Sasha Andrik.
Still want to mention that Radoslav did, I think, nearly 1 hour 40 on one set of tires. By far the longest out of any hypercar.
That's pretty impressive for a hypercar tyre as well.
Audi stand 1.5 seconds now behind Enrico Bräuninger. And I think Sasha Unrich and Fenton may get past Władysław Piłonkiewicz here.
Yeah, he's got 15 seconds left before he's dropped down from the air jacks. So did a lot of repair work there. He'll have a nice clean BMW to finish this race with.
It's also interesting currently how the cars are distributed across the tracks, because we have all the action going on in Sector 1, essentially. So we also have Joe Surya in the pits, 13 car. But a very empty Sector 2 and Sector 3.
Yeah, Michael G got a lot of empty space ahead of him. He's got all of the clean air in the world.
And Sasha Unrich has pretty much the exact opposite of that. Now getting past Etzelsberger and having 2 more GT3s in front of him. Fenton just behind him. Now within a tenth. There we see him. Fight for P6 in class in GT3 and the fight for P5 in class in Hypercar. Fenton going to the outside of Sasha Unrich. And further behind we also see the side-by-side between OG Stan and Enrico Bräuninger.
That's still carrying on. They seem determined to take it to the International Horseshoe.
And for now it's again Enrico Bräuninger who is keeping the upper hand. Enrico seems to be very strong on the defense here right now.
He does seem to have some impressive defensive skills, and I'm sure Tony Holtzberger was raging about them earlier on, but for now he's probably an Enrico Bräuninger fanboy, saying just keep OG Stan behind you for a little bit longer.
It does help him quite a lot. Now in the slipstream, Audi stand through the inside into bus up, does not go for it. He will try to go for the slingshot. Building up speed. And now going towards the outside onto the banking. And clears Enrico Bräuninger well before turn 1. Julian Chicot on lap 79.
Yeah, he's just started doing his 79th lap right now. So we're getting into the final moments of the race.
So far we lost 4 cars. David Baker, Cesco Manuel, Lawrence Peters and Javier Fernandez unfortunately couldn't take the start. some of them due to technical issues.
Enrico Bräuninger managing to keep in the slipstream zone of OG Stan right now, which is just helping him maintain that gap to Tony Elsberger.
We're also about to answer a very important question. How long does it take Maximilian Dehn to put a lap on Dominik Ladler? And the answer is 73 laps of Daytona. Or 2 hours and 5 minutes. Actually 6 minutes. Both great drivers in their own regards. I think also with a lot of respect for each other. And
Yeah,
also with very different backgrounds.
It was a good clean overtaking move, but like kind of no unnecessary space given. It was tight, and Dominik Ladder pulled in immediately there to go try and maximize the draft he could get.
He knows how this thing works. The interesting thing, of course, is Maximilian Dehn having a lot of background in sim racing itself. So we see yellow flag out in Sector 1. That is for Władysław Piłonkiewicz and I think also Dennis Kurzer. But yeah, Maximilian Dehn, lots of experience in sim racing, did many endurance races. I think he told me a story of doing a race with René Rust and Kelvin van der Linde, actually. But Dominik Ladler, being one of the most competitive people and going to the World Tours, I think it was called that, or the World Championship, in Rainbow Six Siege, which of course has nothing to do with driving cars in circles. But yet these two are both competing against each other. Very competitively at times. In our races here at RENNSPORT. Julian Chicot still with that front left damage. It doesn't seem to slow him down in the grand scheme of things. Of course, lap time have plummeted a bit, but actually he's still keeping a good gap to Timothy Fridge, who of course took that second pit stop. Maybe this is one of those things that cools down the tire. Although I don't think on Daytona that is really the case, with it mostly being left-hand corners. Dennis Kurzer getting past Enrico Bräuninger there. Also having a bit more of a silent race, Dennis Kurzer, but a very strong one. Still running third. Had to defend from it very much at the start of the race, from the likes of Michael G and Fenton. But kept his cool, kept his car on track. Michael G also running in fourth after being a bit up and down the grid. but certainly looking to finish strong here. Missing a bit of his diffuser, so maybe lacking a bit of rear end downforce there, but apart from that, doing pretty well.
Julian Shakur making a few little mistakes, as you might expect after this long, but he's nothing too serious. He's got plenty of a gap, so he's not pushing too hard right now. Just concentrating on bringing it home. Got 5 laps to go.
Yeah, the difference between the Hypercars and GT3s in the end. Hypercars 3 laps to go, GT3s 11, so 8 laps difference between the two. Or between the class leaders, that is, Julian Shakur and Maximilian Dehn. And certainly made the race a bit more interesting.
And Max Dehn, I think, kind of showing his class a bit here by still running in the 43s. He's just done a 43.2, coming around to do another lap. So his pace only very marginally affected by 2 hours of racing here.
Luciano Caso, I think for me, definitely one of the strongest drivers in this race. He's running 5th in class, but starting 12th in class, or 11th. On the last row of the grid, that is. I think there were some very decent moves into the bus stop. The fight with Enrico. Still keeping the car very much in a good shape throughout.
Yeah, which is super important on these kind of events. We've seen how some of the longer repair pit stops have really shaken things up in some of the classes.
For Dominic Lala
Tony
as well.
Ellsberger.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say Tony Ellsberger now 2.5 seconds behind Enrico Bräuninger, but they're running at practically the same pace now. So doesn't seem to be closing up much. Now OG Stan's kind of got a bit of free air ahead of them. All right at the end.
Well, the whole OG Stan topic, of course, very interesting on its own, because he had a very strong opening phase, was running P4 throughout, then had this mistake, the pit stop that threw him back, then was super close to Tony and Enrico while they were fighting, did the mistake again, and now he's still in front of them. So a very good comeback drive, I'd say, or recovery drive.
Yeah, he's persevered, and it's paid off. I think that always seems to be kind of the way with endurance racing.
Yeah, and of course not making a mistake is kind of the key point of it. Kimi Hapler, one of those who didn't do mistake. I think he ran P3 from the start of the race, actually, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, pretty much after the opening lap, he was definitely in P3, and he's just sat there. Managed to get almost in the fight for the top 2 places with earlier on with Salazar and Dehn, but couldn't quite bridge the gap.
But also for Salazar, the opening phase of this race was absolutely phenomenal. That fight with Maximilian, he lost out a bit of pace afterwards, even though he followed Dehn for a long time. Maybe that also has eaten into his tires a bit too much, having more understeer than typically, and of course allowing Max Dehn to just run in clean air. Who knows? Yeah. However, he has shown why he is P2 in this race. The opening moves.
Pace, Salazar's pace has been very consistent. He's back in the 43.4s, which his fastest lap is a 43.258, so he's basically still running quali pace.
And of course for Max Dehn, I mean, it's pretty much the same. That opening fight with Carlos Salazar. And since then has never looked back. Lapped everybody but Kimi Hapler and Carlos Salazar.
Having a quick look through the drivers, I can't see anyone having any kind of outstanding penalty. The driving's been pretty clean here today. A few off tracks, as you might expect, but I don't think anyone getting punished for it.
I also see, of course, the typical driving outside of track limits. I see one drive-through for Joel Soria throughout.
Yeah.
But that's it. And of course now towards the end of the race, most people tend to take it easy.
Oh, Radoslav Pionkovic got a drive-through for speeding in the pit lane.
That would explain the second visit to the pits, but still for him, he had a, I think, very strong showing here today.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you can't understate how difficult it can be to drive this car without ABS at this pace throughout.
Yeah, he's got to be fairly happy with that. Our leader is about to go on to the final lap, so everyone will start getting shown the white flag soon, I think.
Indeed, so we see Dennis Kurzer. Oh, actually, we're good. It's just the minimap being a bit off.
Enrico Bräuninger, the inevitable Enrico Bräuninger OG Stan Eltsberger fight has now gone down to a 1.5 second gap each way.
Yeah, you can see it on the map quite easily with the 8, 6 and 7 cars chasing each other. Going into the bus stop, but they will have one more lap. So not too much time to relax. For Julian Chico, whatever, it's just one more bus stop to go. Will be, I think, his first 2.4-hour victory. A second for Maximilian Dehn. And it definitely wasn't due to lack of competition. Timothy Pritch gave him a good run for his money. But it will be Julian Chico winning the Florida Beach 500. Closing out lap 87 after 2 hours, 18 minutes and 38 seconds. It will be...
He's got to be pretty pleased with that.
He should be, yeah. And also for Timothy Fritsch and Dennis Kurzer to be standing on this podium, I think, is quite the achievement.
Yeah, for sure. It was maybe not action-packed at the front of the grid for them, but I think the kind of consistency of Julian Chico's pace has been pretty impressive, even with a pretty messed up Porsche after a bit of a visit to some Daytona wall.
Also from Maximilian Dehn. I mean, he had to fight for it this time around. But he showed, I think, everybody why he's held in such high regards. And he will come home to win the GT3 class. Salazar and Hapler already finished their races in 3rd and 4th. And Dominic Ladler will be the last car out on track, coming home 11th overall. That's 4th in class. And that was a Florida Beach 500. What do you think? I really enjoyed this one.
It was a really good race. I really enjoyed just how much battling there was up and down the track, the field. Sorry, and the fact that battling happened pretty much the entire length of the race.
Yeah, and I mean the multi-class aspect of it, of course, kicking in. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to do stuff like this again. But yeah, I think it's also time for us to close out the evening. Of course, in 2 weeks we will have normal RCE again. That one being a bit more simple than that, also multi-class though. And next week, RCL Season 7 is going to start at the Nürburgring, so make sure to not miss that. The RCL races, always great sprint cup racing, or sprint car racing with the GT3 class. So I'm looking forward to see maybe some of you from chat as well. Do you have any final words, any final verdicts for the next weeks?
No, just carry on. Thank you thank you everyone for coming and watching today. Thanks to everyone for taking part. It's be a pretty boring cast without you guys. And yeah, hope to see any of you taking part in the future events. If you've been watching today and you fancy having a go, then download the game, give it a go. It's free. Why not?
Good thing. From my side also. Until next time, have a good evening. Enjoy the very short rest of your week. And until then, goodbye.
Goodbye.